Okay. So now, where did we get up to? I think we're up to the first pasuk still, right? Here it goes. First pasuk. We're going to continue, but we're going further. Vayi b'mei Achashverosh hu Achashverosh. Start of the days of Achashverosh. That's Achashverosh. Hamoilech me'hoidu ad Kush. Mentions two places. He ruled over hoidu ad Kush. Sheva v'esrim me'er b'dina. 127. So the obvious question, or we continue on many stuff here, is what's the point of saying me'hoidu ad Kush? Why say it? Now there happens to be a fascinating thing. We have not discussed yet the history of who this Achashverosh is. Mm-hmm. And in general, if you go to the non-Jewish sources, the Persian Empire was taken over by the Greeks, and they destroyed all of the history from the Persian Empire. Until the 1850s, when they started making the Cairo Geniz and these things, even in the non-Jewish world, there was very little information on the Persian Empire. Even though it says here the end of Megillah rely on the Ksuvim, we don't have that many stuff from them. So Even Ezra has an idea. So we should take it seriously. He wants to say, Even Ezra says that there were two Achashveroshes. That names. So again, it's not such a chiddush because people repeat names by fathers and grandfathers. Not a big deal. Yeah. Not that it was a name like Pari, which might be a generic name, but even maybe his real name. And there is a debate who Achashverosh was when you start looking around the Goyish sources. But he says it's two Achashveroshes. And that's why it says, HaMoilech me'hoidu ad Kush, because the other Achashverosh had a bigger empire, a larger empire. And we want to say who we talk about, by the way. We're entering the beginning of the story, which Achashverosh are referring to. By the way, we're going to tell you right now, HaMoilech me'hoidu ad Kush. Which Melech? The Melech me'hoidu ad Kush. And that's in Even Ezra. And we can go down a long conversation with this on which Achashverosh is, but I think personally that the history of these things are not going to be as entertaining as other things. But you look through in Nehemiah and Ezra, and Even Ezra points in these psukim, we have to figure who this is. Obviously, we know this Achashverosh married to Esther, had a son Dayavish. According to the Even Ezra, there might have been a second Achashverosh, also with a son Dayavish. Again, first Even Ezra here, and on the notes of the footnotes, it has the Even Ezra quote somewhere else. Just as a thing.
We just learned in the Gemara though, the whole.
About to get to that. But first, before that, so the first thing we have to know is that the reason why it's saying it, the reason why it mentions the two cities, the reason why it mentions it is to tell us that, by the way, which Achashverosh is really to point out who it is. The geography is to point out the personality. And again, the Even Ezra is very good. The Shita says since he's holding there two Achashveroshes, so it makes sense to say which Achashverosh we're referring to. We'll have this Achashverosh as well. Now we have. David said correctly that the Gemara says, "What's a hoidu ad Kush?" Is it Rashi? Rashi says, "Hamoilech almei besim bedinas kemoi shemoilech hoidu ad Kush oimdim ze etzel ze." So Rashi, there is a machlokes in the Gemara. The machlokes in the Gemara of where hoidu and Kush are, and it's chadamar that right near each other, and chadamar they're not near each other. So we're going to analyze that Gemara tonight. I don't know how much you did, but we're going to go into it. So the easiest explanation, which is not the first explanation, which is odd, the easiest explanation is going to be that there are two Kushes. There's a Kush in the Kush Valley in Iran, right? There's a Kush Valley in Iran, and Kush in general is called Ethiopia. So the simple way to understand hoidu ad Kush, the Gemara says one is it's an easy and one's a wide. How far do you judge? Does he write hoidu ad Kush from Mizrach to Ma'ariv or hoidu ad Kush are right next to each other? So what do you pick in hoidu ad Kush? So the easy explanation is going to be there's two different Kushes. Either there's a hoidu ad Kush right near each other, in India and Persia right near each other, or there's one in the Ethiopian valley, that would be a much wider thing. That's the easiest explanation, which is not the first explanation. The famous explanation is they're right near each other. But the question is, how do you look at each other? Do you look at it going this direction or the other direction? Mm-hmm. And just in case not everyone knew it, so it depends. If two cities are near each other, you could take a short route. Or if you're on the meter of the taxi, you're in a location that they don't know you, all of a sudden it lands out being an hour and 45-minute drive. Little did you know you're driving around the city. If you go around the world the other way, that's what it is.
Now, if they would have thought that the world is round, they didn't.
Oh, so that's Grada. Doc is right, and that's what we're going to discuss tonight. Tonight, even I'm admitting, even though we're going slowly on the whole psukim thing, this I'm going to say I am taking something a little bit out of what would be in with the story of the Megillas Esther. We're going to use it as a launch based on what you just said. So I'm glad someone else brought it up first. So now this is what's fascinating. There is a question which we're going to discuss tonight, the ramifications, not halacha l'maisa, of what's called the international dateline. Now, the international dateline, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Bluth told me this himself. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, huge shoulders, made huge rulings, and on incredible situations, on life and death situations, on the whole IVF stuff, which created potential issues. He usually had very large shoulders and no issue. Never backed down from an argument. And that sounds, I mean, in a respectful way. Rabbi Bluth told me a couple of things, but one of the things that Moshe never ruled on, international dateline. Fascinating, never ruled on. And people went to him with questions. What do we do? International dateline? He never ruled. Why did he never rule? Bluth was telling me, I think it was his own idea, but Rabbi Moshe was Maramis to it, he told me, is because there's no open Gemara that talks about the international dateline. So Rabbi Moshe, which was in general unique, Rabbi Moshe was like one of these personalities that held, he didn't look at a lot of previous sources. Again, I don't mean it as extreme as it sounds, but Rabbi Moshe writes in the introduction to his first volume that a posek, a ruler, has to look through the sugya on his own, be honest, be clear, come up with your own ruling, and then you're good. You're good to go. You're not obligated to look at all the previous sources. When the Hungarians and other people came across after the war, and they heard about Rav Moshe Feinstein, they were very, very anti some of his stuff. Because the Hungarian methodology, which a lot is to quote the previous sources in the last 150 years, the Chuvas. Rav Moshe, when you look around, he does quote, I'm not saying he never does, but it's rare. He's not big into quoting things. So, why? What did he do? He went to the original sources, went through it, and figured it out. But there is no open Gemara at all that talks about international dateline. And therefore, Moshe held, it's not something he feels in his thought process will work, that he can even get involved, and therefore he wouldn't rule. And people who were going to the Far East in Rav Moshe's times, he would tell them, this is the line Rav Bluth told me, he would tell them, if you have the capabilities, now it's much easier, this is in the 80s and the 70s, if you have the capabilities, which meant money, a lot of money, time, effort, all of the stuff, if you have the capabilities to make it to these places for your businesses, you also have the capabilities to get out of there before Friday, before it becomes a question. That's what I used to tell people. So people come to him all the time, and it was a recurring question. What do I do? I'm going to Japan, I'm going to Australia. If you have enough money to get there, you have enough money to lose a little money and leave a day early. That's what he's telling him. Don't get involved with the question. He would not get involved with the question. Now, what is the question? Because as Doc just said, we're not even sure when the world was round. Now, we as Jews know, depends on how you read there are definitely many sources that seem to imply that we knew the world was round. So for the most probably early example, but not the only one, is let's say when we talk about Parshas Nasai, and we have the kaf achas, ka'ara achas, and the Medrash there says, why is it called a kaf? A spoon which is not flat, a spoon has a circumference to it, and the Medrash says, because we want to rule over the world, that also looks like a kaf. And that's Medrash is going back 1,500 years, easy. We have a Zohar that talks about the roundness of the world. Absolutely. We have a Gemara that says Alexander was lifted up and saw the roundness of the world. So in Jewish lore, way before the non-Jewish people came to a full conclusion, we did not necessarily believe the world is square. And again, if you look through, you can find sources that can be manipulated to the anti-people that it does look square, but overall it doesn't seem, there are too many sources saying it's round. So you can look at the square source and say you have to figure something else out. But there are definitely round sources. But even with all of that, even once we found out the world was round, they didn't make an international dateline. When was the international dateline come up with? Mid-1800s. Or late 1800s. In the 1800s.
They never traveled to the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
So that means, but they were still traveling. That means at one point in time, for many, many hundreds of years, even the Goyim did not feel a need for an international dateline. And when Goyish rules, but Etzem, who cares? Like, why does anyone care? What do you really care what day it is? We have a problem. Because we have observance of mitzvahs that are tied into the days. But Goyim, I mean, they can have a Sunday off. It's not really practical what they care. So you can show up in somewhere, if it's Sunday or Monday, what do you care? There's no phones. It's not like you're calling these people in the 1850s.
There are many places where there's shilas, where the islands in the Pacific, where nobody ever even went to.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the Goyim even. Even the Goyim, the Goyim had trades to Africa in the 1500s. The Goyim have been traveling the world round since the 1500s, right? And they never at one point thought about making
it. They always went across the Atlantic. They crossed the Pacific on that side.
But even if you don't cross it, you're still hitting Japan. At least with the question with the international day Olympic.
Close to the mainland, so they consider it the same as the mainland.
Oh yeah. So in the questions in Haralachas in the 1880s already, the question starts coming up. But so once the Goyim made international dateline, now the question became to the Jews. When we show up in a place, are we going to keep Shabbos on Sunday or Friday? That will depend. So what's the need for international dateline, which I think is very obvious to anybody, but to make it clearer in the understanding. The time of day is not debatable. Right now it is 8:30. That's not a debate. Everyone knows what time of day it is. And when you start moving around the globe, it will always be clear what time of day it really is. What will be unclear at a certain point is what day it is. But the time of day is very easy. And I think there's two ways to understand this that we'll try to do it. If we're standing in New York right now at 8:30, we know that in California, it's 3 hours back. So if you want to go to California, it's clear it's 3 hours later because the sun is moving from east to west. So as you go further west, you're behind on the time. So now if you're starting right now at 8:30, we want to do a simple walk. We're going to have two people start out right now and do a race, and each one's going to go the direction around the world. So again, the time doesn't change. So right now, if it's 8:30 by us, an hour to the west toward California is going to be 7:30. As you go further, 6:30, 5:30, that's already California. Now you start going to the ocean, 4:30, you're going earlier. But if you're going the other way, we're going now toward the Atlantic, the opposite direction, you're going to start going in the other direction time. So it's 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. No, the time is not undebatable. And as you go around and you're hitting the days, you're going to come around full circle, 12 hours each direction. They're both going to hit the time 100%. In the opposite of whatever New York is, you're going to hit 8:30 a.m. That's no debate. The question is, did you go backward to 8:30 or did you go forward to 8:30? The difference is what day you hit. That's one way of understanding why it has to be this way. Or you could just look at it as if one guy is going forward, at one point he can't be going simultaneously. He has to change days. At one point there has to be a day change based on the world, how it's set up. So everyone came to this understanding. And when I say everyone, I don't even mean everyone, because a lot of people don't. Not the crazy people who think the world is still flat. Many of those people. Not the crazy people who think that no one landed on the moon. I'm talking about there are people who believe in Jewish law, pre-international dateline. The Yavitz famously saying it. The Yavitz is talking about international dateline before there was an international dateline. He's saying, who cares? It's irrelevant. You don't have to. You show up, whatever everyone's doing, you do. There is a concept in Jewish law to ignore the whole thing altogether. Because why do we have to do it? But before that, we want to discuss why there's a need for it. The reason need for it, my understanding, the easiest way to explain it is going this direction. If you're starting at 8:30, you're going back or forward, you're going to reach 8:30. The question is, did you go back 12 hours or forward 12 hours? That's the difference of what day of the week it is. So,
I think the Kuzari brings down.
yes, there's a Kuzari, absolutely, a Seder Olam, yes. Now, when I said there's no open Gemara, we can make a game tonight, we are making a game tonight, and say that the Hoidiv Kush is the international dayline. That's Moshe Hubner being cute. But there is a point of if once we're learning the Gemara could be this way or that way.
It's arbitrary.
So originally it became arbitrary. That's not what everyone holds, but yes. So originally it became an arbitrary thing. The Americans were there also. They went to Greenwich, Greenland, and they decided to make it. And they figured a smart idea. Do it over where nobody lives. Because why make people confused? Why make people confused of where they're living? So let me do two Gemaras quickly here, just to show you that. Because there is one Gemara that potentially is discussing the international dateline, which is not really the Gemara, but how the Baal Ma'or learns the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't seem to say it. So the Gemara starts like this. The Gemara says, we go, at one point in history, that we decided the months based on witnesses coming to court. Witnesses come to court, that's on the months, how long a month could be. The moon goes around 29 and a half days. And in 29 and a half days, we don't believe in half days in Judaism. That's a special pasuk. I remember I was once in Rosh Hashiva mine years ago, and he told me that if not for the pasuk, we would do it. You needed a special pasuk to tell us. Otherwise, why can't we have a month start in the middle of the day? Big deal. Have it January 31st until the first half of the day. In the middle of the day, starts a new day. For some reason, the Gemara needed a pasuk and Erech to tell you not that way. So now we have like this. 29 and a half days. So we're going to go back and forth, basically. Some months will end before the 29th day, and some months will end after the 29th day. Yes. That's
what the Gemara considers.
No, that's something, yes. It's a cousin of what I'm saying. So now the question becomes like this. So the Gemara says that at times, we force Adam to either yes talk or not talk. So if you always see the moon, and you tell Adam, don't come because we want to make the cheshbon, it's a problem. Because everyone will say, what do you mean? We saw the moon. How's it not possible? But if nobody saw the moon and two people come and say, we saw the moon, we can tell them, listen, we have cheshbonis, we're not telling you right now. So if we're going to tell you to wait. Don't say it. And most people didn't see the moon. You guys saw it. You know what? It's not like everyone's going to think the rabbis are crazy. That's what it's discussing over there. So in that Gemara, which is Chaf Amar Aleph on the bottom, it's talking about not being ma'ayim al Adam, not making the Adam nervous. My time. And what's the reason why? Because it looks like they're lying. If the whole world saw the moon and we didn't do it. But the other way, it doesn't look at mitzvah shikra, because if everyone saw it, he didn't do it, it's a problem. But if no one saw it and two guys came forward, okay, so I didn't see it. So you could make up amazing, by the way, it's a backward logic. We're going to tell two people, come to court, give fake testimony, you saw it, we'll go with it. Don't worry, we're going to force you guys to make a fake testimony, because no one else saw anything, but we needed a day early for whatever reasons we have. Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel says, I could fix up the entire calendar. I know everything, don't worry about it. Cheshbonis are easy for me. So, Amalei Abba Vuder of Shmuel, Abba, the father of Samloi, told the Shmuel, yeah, you're talking everything about the constellations and the whole thing. Yada Mai Hayamil said, what about this thing called Soida Iber, the secret of the Iber? What is this? It's very vague terminology. And he said, no, I have no idea what that means. Oh, you don't know that? Don't get so confident. We can't trust you. But what are these vague terminology? There's a long Rashi. Our scroll has charts here. We're not going into that. The Baal Ma'or learns that Gemara is talking about this concept of international dateline. Again, there was no international dateline then, but it's talking about when the beginning of the world was created. Now, obviously, it's called Soid HaIber. Soid means a secret. That means on some level, the concept of doing Kiddush HaChodesh and Iber Hashana, either 29 days or 30 days, or 12 months here or 13 months here, is called the Soid. So the article says, now the question of why it's called Soid, there are literally 25 good answers on why it's called a Soid.
What Masechta is that?
This is Rosh Hashanah 20. Yes. Now, so we call it a Soid. The Rambam has a famous thing. The Rambam says that even though we made a calendar till today, we stopped relying on witnesses. The calendar only works if there are great rabbis in Israel, and this is Mamash Zionist protocols. There's a secret society that meet once a month. Were you invited? They wouldn't tell us. But there's a secret society in Israel that's invited. So the word Soid HaIber, secret society based on this constellation. And the other famous explanation is that no.
The Rambam can testify that this happened throughout the Golas?
Yeah, that's what he says. It's a big kasha. This Rambam is a very big, very wild Rambam.
You say there was always a presence.
No, 52 years, no. There was 52 years after the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, they said there was no one around. But yes, but the Rambam seems to say, until his time, which will be until today, a secret cabal that meets once a month to decide that it happens to be that if you look through the Rishonim on why it's called the secret, the other answer of why it's called Soda Iber is because there was a simple mathematical equation. I say simple, huge quotes around the word simple. Very unsimple mathematical equation. So what they did was, the rabbis had other cheshbonis on why they wanted to delay the year or not delay the year. Based on weather, based on the roads, which Gemara and Sanhedrin, which makes sense. They had a lot of reasons. They weren't one-focused people. They were rabbis leading countries. They had multiple reasons. But they said, listen, if everyone knows the constellations and everyone knows the cheshbon, then everyone every month can say, well, you rabbis, you got it wrong. People go after rabbis all the time. Happened already 1,000 years ago. So what the rabbis did was, they purposely hid this methodology. That means when they went to yeshiva, they don't teach Navi. You know what else they didn't teach? They didn't teach the constellations. They didn't want people to know it. They kept the cheshbon of the months, of how to know the stars. Nowadays, you're going to Google. They wanted to keep this 29.5-day cheshbon secret. Oscar published it. But in the old days, they held, no, keep it Soida Iber. Therefore, no one should know about it. Therefore, everyone's going to know, the month was now, not now. Nobody knows when the Moiled is. We have to say it in English or Yiddish. When the guy gets up there and reads the Moiled, is anyone listening? I always want to clap. Oh, you got the Moiled wrong.
Isn't there a Gemara that tells you exactly it's like 29.5 days? It tells you to the chilek
yes,
exactly what it is.
But
isn't that the Soida Iber?
But the Soid was all the details that go into it. Yes, all the details go into it. And when you read that Gemara, it takes you about 7 seconds. You're not reading all the calculations. So they made sure no one's reading the calculations.
You also don't know when it began because exactly you don't know the minute that it began.
That's where the debate begins on where the international dateline should be. So what happened was, step one is the Goyim came along, they made an international dateline, and they said, as we said, let's make it in some area that nobody exists on. Simple thing, is an area nobody exists, which is a good cheshbon. And they said the simple cheshbon that we don't care if the fish have different days, but human beings, we don't want 48th Street to be Shabbos and 47th Street to be Friday. It's too weird. Now, before you start that, one of the rabbis, who's, again, first-class Hall of Famers, I don't want to, came and said, what are you talking about? When you start looking around, we have such a Yisrael in Judaism. One Gemara, Rosh Hashanah, Chaf Aleph and Aleph, we might have mentioned it a couple weeks ago, Chaf Aleph and Aleph says, in Rosh Hashanah, says like this, Levi, let's read it in English, Levi visited Babylonia on the 11th of Tishrei. He walked into Babylonia on the 11th of Tishrei. And he said in public, look at this. These Babylonians eat great food on Yom Kippur. That's a good guest walking into town. Oh, love the meals. It's Yom Kippur, guys. And they said, what do you mean? Yom Kippur today's the 11th. There was a miscommunication of when the month began. And he said, you guys got it wrong. Now, clearly, Tosfos right away says, Levi, you're a rabbi, you hold Yom Kippur, where are you going? How far are you going? We have in Jewish law, there's a limit of how far you're allowed to travel on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So Levi, what are you doing? You don't go start giving mussar to these guys eating, which, okay, it's bad. But they don't know about the eating. They're like innocent in a way. They don't know about the chart. You knew it's Yom Kippur. What are you taking a shpatz here for 15 miles? So Tosfos right away says, no. You have to learn that he was within the tchum. Has to be. And Tosfos, people extrapolate from Tosfos. That means within the tchum, there's no problem. Within 2,000 amas, some people keeping Shabbos, Sunday, Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, not a problem at all. It's not a big deal to have. If the Torah is going to set the system up, that we're going to have a mandated Torah version of where the international dateline starts, and we could prove where it is, then this cheshbon of saying we can't cross the streets, irrelevant. We cross the street all the time. Yom Kippur, not Yom Kippur. We cross the street in all types of laws. The first Mishnah in Gittin talks about the halachas of bringing a get from outside of Eretz Yisrael as opposed to bringing a get from inside Eretz Yisrael. Inside Eretz Yisrael and outside Eretz Yisrael have different halachas of the get. Do you have to have certain testimonies to do it? And it mentions a city there called Aku, somehow exists still today. And Tosfos has a whole length of saying Aku is a split city. Half in Eretz Yisrael, half outside Eretz Yisrael. And Tosfos starts discussing, oh, by the way, what are we going to do about this halacha of b'fanav nechtam? We don't like this. Tosfos, we don't like the idea of the guy on 47th Street being forced to say certain things when he gives a get, and the guy on 48th Street, no, it's weird. It's going to look bad and make the rabbis, adds on a word there, Tosfos, it'll make the rabbis look silly. The rabbis are setting up a system, and the guy on 48th Street, the guy on 47th Street are different systems. So this grand rabbi from not so long ago says, I got a Gemara from Levi showing you that Yom Kippur might be 2 separate days. I have a Tosfos in Shabbat, in Gittin, that tells you, rabbinically speaking, don't mess things up. But biblically speaking, who cares? Who cares? If the line crosses right this table, the line crosses. There's no such thing as God looking like a joke. We don't believe in such things. So I don't like this rabbi says, don't stop believing this nonsense with the whole world accepted as a basic thing, that no, you can't split an avenue. No, that's not true. Of course you can split an avenue. You'll split it by Levi's Gemara. He'll split it by the Gemara Naku. And guess what else he has? He has a third Gemara. The Gemara says, a guy's walking in the desert, and he lost track of time. Guy's in jail. Applies to a guy in jail, lost track of time. What do? Count 6 days and keep Shabbos. And he wants to understand, this applies to 2 different guys in the desert on 2 different days, traveling together. One keep Shabbos, one day, one get the other. And when they reach the city, they're not liable. Let's say they get to the city and they say, by the way, you don't realize when you went to bed on Friday and you woke up an hour later, it was 25 hours later. You're off. Your 6 days were not 6 days. They were 7 days. And you messed up. He's not mechuyev to bring a carbon. Again, a little extreme. He said he didn't do anything wrong. He did the job. So that would mean that you could have people walking into towns and have
it. The shaggy that he forgot when Shabbos is?
He forgot what day it was.
That's what I'm saying. He forgot what day it was.
No carbon. No carbon.
He's a shaggy. He didn't know it. We didn't know
no carbon. So on the biblical violation, we can give it to him. If you accidentally, it's about shagging, accidentally violated Shabbos, you accidentally violated Shabbos. You bring a carbon.
Right, he did.
He doesn't bring a carbon.
He accidentally violated Shabbos.
So why are you not bringing a carbon?
I don't know, why not?
That's the point. This rabbi wants to say that because there's nothing wrong, because Shabbos goes when you decide. Shabbat, the Radvaz, borderline Rishon. The Radvaz says that when people go to a new place, back then, 1500s, you walk into desert land, people go to a new place, what do they do about the holidays? Wherever you came from, keep Shabbos wherever you came from. Mm-hmm. And the Radvaz seems to say, it's a long tshuva, a lot of the international dateline people quote this, even though he's not quoting international dateline, he's quoting about Shabbos. He says if 2 different people came from 2 different towns, there was no town yet, and they show up, okay, you have 2 sides of the city. You want about what's a licensed guy do? Yeah. These guys will keep Shabbos on Tuesday, they'll keep Shabbos on Wednesday, because that's where you came from. The new city goes by the old minhag. Now, if he says if you get there is the city, then you go what they're doing. Very strange. How did they get there? So if they got there from the same place, then you got to go with them. But if you're opening up your own city, you're not required to go by them. Which means, on some level, these Rabbanim, Chashav Rabbanim want to say that when it comes to Shabbos, we always are taught from a little kid that Shabbos is set up in Shemayim and the Yom Tov is set up by us. Exactly. But what's the lashon you say in davening? Am mekache shvi. So I saw he brought down. The Shoel Mesher says this, not me. Other big rabbis are going in this direction. It's a while they did. For some reason, no one ever talks about it. Shoel Mesher says, what does it say? Am mekache shvi. What's the word in English? The nation is mekadesh Shabbos. We'll talk in Cheder. We don't mekadesh Shabbos. No, Akash Baruch is mekadesh Shabbos. We do Yom Tov. Mekadesh Yisrael v'Azmanim.
Shabbos v'Yisrael Azmanim. Yisrael is Mekadesh only Zmanim.
But what? That's the normal way we're taught. And again, I'm not saying the Sholem Meshiv takes this word very seriously. Sholem Meshiv says he's talking about the Yavitz, who says ignore international dateline. He's saying, listen, I know people are against this Yavitz, but I don't know. I say it every week in davening, which means before we start even getting into the details of when the international dateline is, and if know one thing, there are many legitimate rabbis who say we don't have to hold it, we don't need it. You go where you go with. Who cares what the Goyim say Shabbos is? You cross into who cares? We don't need it. You go what you're going with. You count 6 days and go. So you traveled and you went with a whole town. So you traveled. Yeah, you show up there, you do Shabbos, whenever you want. There's an official line from Mehechatesa. You go as you go. And that's a theory quoted by many legitimate stars. Legitimate stars. Sholem Meshiv is huge. But obviously, if you're going to start looking up the shittas of the rabbis, for some reason this shita has fell through the cracks. But there's another shita to take it seriously. Tzvi Pesach, Frank, and others who say we're not busy getting into Ramah, Baal Ma'ar. No, whatever the guy did is fine. There's no real things. Whatever the guy did, you go with the guy. What's amazing is there's a Rabbi Shapiro who was in Eretz Yisrael, a genius in mathematics. We might even quote him a couple of times. He goes through all the Ibiyos in history. It's mind-blowing stuff. And he, in that famous meeting in Yerushalayim when they were worried about 1941, what to do when the Jews got to Japan, and then they started thinking, well, we don't know what day it is anymore now, and they sent a letter and took Katinsky from the Ger, where everyone was getting involved. This Rav Shapiro showed up, and he proved in a mind-blowing tshuva that, not that you go with the Goyim because why not? He says, we're Jews. We don't believe go with the Goyim. He was Chasisha. Don't believe go with the Goyim, why not? You know what he said? HaKadosh Baruch Hu set it up that way. And he proved that the international dateline is really the dateline. The Katinsky and the Chazanish were fighting of what we're about to do. He was like, no. The Goyim did this because HaKadosh Baruch Hu set it up. We believe in such things that the Goyim can hit it right once in a while. HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up Nevuah by the Goyim. And he has a whole cheshbon why it worked out. And he said the whole cheshbon is set up. Why? Because that is the biblical international dateline that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set the system up that they should get there. So, just how we're doing this so far. We have a Hoidu Riyad Kush that Doc said might be, and everyone else knew the Gemara, and we said we're going to use that as really a springboard for the international dateline. We said there's automatically a need for international dateline. That's what everyone held, because if we're going in two directions, 12 hours and 12 hours. And then we said we have now a legitimate sheet to saying that's not true. Who cares? You go what you're doing. If you're walking this way, you do it. I mean, according to these people, if two people start out on 8:40, and they go 12 hours east and west, and they get there, each one keeps their own Shabbos, no problem. Now again, most people's first reaction, that can't be. But there are legitimate Rabbanim who say Avada. And probably even a Radvaz, who's 1500s. Probably even a Radvaz.
What, Shabbos won't be the same?
This side of the street keeps Wednesday, they go to Tuesday.
Travels from California.
Listen, I know a shul that everyone davens Ashkenaz, and they don't put on tefillin and Chol Hamoed. So to be a little mixed up here and there is allowed once in a while. It's allowed. So here you have one side of the street Shabbos.
If you travel from California to China, to Shanghai, by plane, you're in trouble. Because you count from the place where you're coming from, you're going to be a different day than everybody else.
And he says if two guys do it and they come different ways, each one's right. Just like in the Midbar, we tell you count 6 days. It's a mechudesh idea. You decide when Shabbos is. You decide when Shabbos. Now, in a way, we could spend 5 weeks on this, but we're not going to. Don't worry. But in a way, there is a machlekes rishonim when HaKadosh Baruch Hu made Shabbos and he rested on Shabbos. What does that mean? Does that mean every place began Shabbos according to the international dateline? Hashem was running along, or there was one Shabbos? And it's machlekes. Some Seif's Talmud says in the Lashon, I wrote it down, Vayechal came by Yom Yashri, Vayishbois. What's Vayechal and Vayishbois? Vayechal was the first place. Vayishbois went across the 24 hours. I once said a famous thing that I think I saw after my real Diskin says it. Pay attention. Everyone died on Makas B'chayris at the same time. Midnight, clock hits midnight, the shoes became not fancy shoes. Is that the name of the story over there? Everyone died at midnight. But what's the name of the word Pesach? The name of the word Pesach means God jumped from house to house. It shouldn't be God jumped from house to house. It should be God descended on half the houses. Descend on half the houses, no? He didn't skip over it. It's a, I can't say billion per second. That's not even enough. It's simultaneous. It's simultaneous. So what do you mean God jumped over house to house?
He jumped over the Jewish houses.
But he didn't jump over. He descended simsimultaneously and then ignored. That's not jumping. Jump when you pitch a door to door.
He skipped.
But how's he skipping? It was all 1 second.
Right.
When you say skip, the word skip from house to house implies it was a time sequence. You can't skip over a house without it taking a certain amount of time.
So it's not what it implies. It means that the simultaneously
He jumped over.
So you're saying answer number one. I'm actually surprised that no one's guessing the answer. A little offensive. I feel a little offended here. You're guessing the answer is that the word skip, the word Pesach, doesn't mean skip like we think it has time. It means simultaneously, like I'm saying, he landed on half the houses. I mean, that means we got the whole Yesod of Pesach wrong, the Baditza V'Rov, the Feiz Baditza. What are you saying? Passover means midnight's not the same second in Egypt.
Oh.
Right now, it goes from east to west.
Wow.
So God was going midnight east to west. Remember, the sun's moving, the moon's moving.
split seconds.
Right? So everyone died exactly midnight. But the guy on the eastern part of Egypt and the guy in the western had 4.5 minutes. The guy in house A to house B had a billionth of a second difference. Right now, we're not in the same time zone. Well, I don't know which east-west is, because we're all mixed up in this place. But I'm saying, wherever east-west is, right? No, wherever the line is east-west, most of us in this room are not in the same sequence right now.
East is diagonally there.
Whatever it is. So right now, most of us, almost all of us in this room, it's impossible we'd all be on the exact line, because it's not possible. So it means all of us in this room right now are on different east-west things. Which means, now, when it comes to Ma'ariv and these things, we're not going to be OCD about it.
Tiny fraction of a second.
Right, because I don't even know today's computers can do the fraction of it. But across the whole Egypt's, I don't even know the numbers. It could be a couple hundred miles even. So across Egypt, that's what you were saying? Is that what you meant? He was passing over, going from east to west. Just like we have the daytime going east to west. Now again, we put time zones of an hour. Why? Because it's easy. We could have done time zones of a half hour. We could have done time zones of 5 hours. We could have done time zones of 1 minute. Of 1 minute. 1 second. The word, that means, so what happened with Shabbos here? Did Hashem begin Shabbos? The Chassam Sofer I just told you was learning that the way others learn, no. The Nafkamina, I can't say halacha, but yes halacha.
Cipher who said about the milliseconds?
No, two different things. Chassam Sofer is talking about yes and no. Chassam Sofer is talking about Shabbos, that the Shabbos of rest, days, creation, was a 24-hour starting time of Shabbos. The Maril Diskin, I think, is what I just told you about the going across the. I wrote it in chain of thought. Razil just looks at it, but I didn't. Then it was nameless. It was. I thought of it, and then later on, I think Maril Diskin has that. You're going from east to west. Passover is going from east to west because the moments of time go east to west. Now, and maybe Shabbos. La halacha. This first question is going to be very serious. When we say chatzos every night, tikkun chatzos, it's a special moment in time. The Gemara doesn't mention it. The Gemara doesn't say about tikkun chatzos. The Gemara in Brachas hints to chatzos at midnight, Gimel Amar Aleph. But there's no tikkun chatzos not brought down in the Gemara. When is tikkun chatzos? Machlokes. Do I go by tikkun chatzos in Israel? If you go, yes, because that's where it's a moment when Hashem starts out from Israel. That's when Shabbos begins. That's when everything is. Then guess what? We have it easy in America. We can do tikkun chatzos at 5 o'clock in the afternoon every day. Sit down on the floor, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If it's a shasa kosher, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not so difficult, and you do tikkun chatzos. Or do you go bus to each place? Again, the debate's going to be on how the world was created, how Shabbos was created, all of these things, which is a cousin or a half-sister to the conversation of the international dateline. Now, once you're establishing that you need an international dateline, we said maybe not. Once you're established there is an international dateline, where it's going to be, if you're not going with the Goyim, became a great debate. Great debate. Now, we're not going to go through the details of the debate just because who cares? For now, who cares? It's important. But the difference is going to be very clear. The different moments in the latitude that you're going to pick means different days. That should be clear. If you're going back 6 and forward 6, and you reach the same time, but you don't know what day it is, then depending on where you start the day, where does the day begin? We know for sure, we'll make it easy for New York and California. We know New York comes before California. So right now in New York it's 10 to 9. In California it's 10 to 6. That's because we assume that California is the same day as us. But if you're going to randomly pick somewhere, just for this conversation, the international dateline, and the international dateline is in the middle of Texas, then we're not 3 hours ahead of California. We're 21 hours behind California. Because Texas starts the day, so California hits it, and we have to wait till the sun comes all the way around to hit it. So again, we're for sure 10 to 9. We're not 10 to 9 ahead of California. We're 10 to 9 behind California. We have to catch up to California because Texas started the day. The day begins at Texas. So Texas starts 12 a.m. It's now Thursday. California starts Thursday, an hour after Texas. New York starts Thursday, 22 hours after Texas. So is New York 22 hours after California, or is New York 3 hours before California? I'm picking New York, California, because that's easy to follow. Are you following this? It's okay, you're getting a headache. Where the day starts, everything follows that. So when you're going to naturally spot down somewhere in the middle of the day, you have to understand that once you're accepting this international dateline, now you're potentially creating issues. Now, in most of the world, it won't be a problem. No one debates if the international dateline begins in Texas. Everyone agrees California follows New York. But when you look at the whole globe, there's going to be areas that are not so clear. And when you hit those non-clear areas where they're between two international dateline potentials, you have 2 different days in front of you. And that creates a problem. And the Chazon Ish family has said that you can't divide landmass. Even though we said before certain Gemaras, just to get on Israel's case, for no reason, this I'm not a nice person. Israel had a good question before. He was like, with the midbrother, with the carbon. Levi's case, is that l'chachilu b'di'evet? One of the rabbis brought that, look, you could have 2 people in the same city keeping your kippah different days. Levi walked into town from 100 yards out, and he said, today's Yom Kippur, what are you guys doing? And therefore he said, you see, people can keep your kippah 2 different days in the same city. We could ask a very simple question. Yeah, Levi wasn't l'chachila. Levi was walking into these guys, when he said that they were eating food, I mean, that was we call passive-aggressive behavior, right? He wasn't saying, guys, I'm happy you're eating the food, but by the way, I'm going to do my thing, you do your thing. Second day Yom Tov in Yeshiva, you get the Israeli guy to turn the shower and the lights on for you. Why? Because him and Chalamoy, for me it's Yom Tov. We allow that, but is that ideal? When Levi said to them, by the way, I think you guys are eating on Yom Kippur, was that, he wasn't saying that's ideal. But there are legit rabbis who say, there's no problem. You could divide landmass. But many say, Chazon said, you can't.
He was saying, I'm right and you're wrong because of it.
But was he saying, I'm okay with this? Unlikely. To bring it as a proof that you could have in Borough Park 2 different days because Levi did it, not so clear. Levi's place was a mistake. That's what I'm saying.
People walking in the streets carrying when I think it's Shabbos.
Right. But they're saying it's Shabbos. They're just doing it.
Calling that on, there's a different number, I think, that says to fast both days, and the other number says he uses the pasuk from Eoy on him. Kalam Hayurei Feino, you trying to kill us all to fast 2 days in a row?
Yeah.
When the Megillah they fasted.
Eicha.
It comes from Eicha.
Yeah, 100%. Now, but what's interesting about the Chazon Ish, this is the one, the Chazon Ish. For some reason, it looks like when you look around, if you ask people, they all say the Chazon Ish was accepted. But when you look around to a lot of the Gedolim, it does not seem they went to Chazon Ish. A lot of them went with the Kaczynskis, international dateline, a lot. But okay, we're not here to judge. Who am I to decide? What's interesting about the Chazon Ish is Korea sticks out on the bottom. So according to the Chazon Ish, when you get into the ocean, then the ocean changes days. So according to the Chazon Ish, if you're going to start out on the west of Korea, I don't know what's west of it, China, and you're on landmass, so we're going to make up a day, it's Tuesday. You get into the ocean, it's not that far, you're now Wednesday, get back into Korea, you're back to Tuesday. It's a little interesting. Now, the main point of what we did so far tonight is to tell us that Hoidu V'Yad Kush, we used it really as even for me, I understand this is not a typical thing, so we'll give one Musavart. They quote over from the Belzer Rebbes as a Musavart. Hoidu represents Hoid, beauty, everything like that, and Kush represents usually dark places, dark things, and it says, from Hoidu to Kush is this far away. You can go from greatness to not greatness very quickly. And they're saying when you start the Megillas Esther to recognize that it is a little scary, know yourself, know what your potential of, and stuff like that.